Good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the 20-minute fashion distraction. I'm Jackie Jenkins, the founder of Sophisticated Creations. You know what we do every Wednesday night? We talk total fashion, and tonight is no different. I just want to share Sophisticated Creations is the online community for the savvy fashionista. And if you're not following our page yet, please follow us on Facebook at Sophisticated Curations and definitely follow us on Instagram at J Curations. So tonight, I am excited, as I am every Wednesday night, but really excited tonight because everyone loves vintage, everyone loves road trips, and everyone loves great ideas. And we are actually going to cover all three tonight as we talk with, and I'm going to bring my guest on. Hi, Alexandra.
Hello. So
Hi.
good to see you.
So wonderful to see you. I started off the segment by saying everybody loves vintage. We all love road trips and we all love good tips. And tonight we're going to cover all three. I like to think that we're going to do a virtual trip to Baltimore as
Oh,
we talk about your vintage style. And I just want to quickly share. So we met via Instagram, but Lynn learned that we have a dear friend in common, Adrian Kiefler, and actually I think it was Brenda, the Chic City girl, that
yes.
introduced. Right? But I will say this: I had been kind of Instagram stalking you because
Oh,
I love your mix of florals and retro and airy and vintage, and it all makes sense that you are volumes of vintage, and just am thrilled that you're here with us. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
thank you.
And I have a series of questions that I want to go through, but I took the picture that I showed, and I see we have Van here. Hi, Van, and Claudia's here, and Amina. Wonderful,
Oh,
wonderful.
yeah, my best friend from childhood.
Oh, hi, Amanda. Nice to
Mhm.
meet you. My mom is here, and Adrian is here. Adrian says she's so excited. So this is lovely, lovely. So I hope everybody kind of got a sense of your style off of the post that I picked. But in case they didn't, I pulled that same picture before we go into the questions because I want people to see your style, and then we'll go into questions in terms of how do you do that. So this is a pic of Alexandra, which I love, 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 love. So let's go to the first question. And that is, how would you describe your style?
I would describe it as eclectic and increasingly bohemian and all about color and print clashing and really exuberant pattern mixing is really at the heart of it. And I always like to give kind of a classic twist to it so that it's all those things, but it has a little bit of refinement to the look.
I love that. When you say increasingly bohemian, what does that mean in terms of your picks and how are you doing that? It sounds divine.
Well, it's very organic. I think that frankly, the older I get and the more empowered I feel through what I wear, and the more I want to reflect my confidence, the more I just take chances. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it's too much, and sometimes it's not enough. And so actually, the photos that you picked, it was always just sort of more is more is more, and you don't know how it's going to photograph. But I think it's gotten increasingly more is more.
I love that. And I see Kendra's here, and Robin. And I like the point that you made in terms of, we never really want to talk about age, but we do want to acknowledge how our style evolves. And I think that's a great point in terms of just thinking about, as we move forward, like how we may want to do different. So I love that piece. And so on Instagram, you go by volumes of vintage.
I do.
Now, what does that mean? And how did
My,
you come up with that wonderful, and it actually totally describes you, but how did you come up with that name?
well, I have to credit my daughter, who was probably 15 at the time. And she said, "You need a name. You need a good name for what you do. And you have so much vintage. and it's like volumes in a library. And so she named it Volumes of Vintage for me.
Oh wow. I love
Mhm.
so when I thought when I thought about volumes in terms of textures,
Mm.
I know what you do, but okay, I love that. I love that. And I see Anthony's here and hi Claudia. Wonderful, wonderful. And actually Claudia, there's a few individuals that are kind of in the DC Baltimore area. So hopefully, and that's why this is kind of the virtual road trip, right? But my goal is to actually be able to come in person and do some vintage shopping with you and Adrian soon. So I'm looking forward to that. So, can you talk about where you're finding your amazing finds?
I will go anywhere for vintage. And for anyone who follows me on Instagram, I actually will truly go anywhere. My friends literally found clothes on the roadside. And some of my posts last week were truly clothes from the road. It wasn't actually a joke. So last week I was everywhere. I went to true thrifting at Value Village. I
So, wait a
will.
minute, where's Value Village?
So
If you
that
wouldn't mind
is
sharing.
in Brooklyn Park,
In Brooklyn Park.
so outside of Baltimore.
Okay.
But the weekend before I was in PA, there's nowhere I won't go. I drove a couple weeks ago to Nostalgia Vintage in Purcellville, Virginia. So if there is vintage, I will go. But I am a big, big supporter of my local vintage community. So I try never to miss an opportunity to shop locally.
Wonderful. So, I'm just going to probe a little bit and be a little nosy.
Sure.
Can you drop a few of the names of where you shop? Only because I see Judith is here, like, and I see Erica's here, and
Oh.
if you don't mind just
Not
sharing.
at all. So I wanted to say that I am not a person, when I post, I want to credit everywhere I get my pieces because part of why I started Volumes of Vintage was actually to promote the sellers. Not because they asked me, but because the sellers have given so much back to me personally in friendship and just discovering a whole world of and a community. So it's very important to me. So some of my local faves, for sure, the Welsh Bohemian, who actually led me to this jumpsuit, which is by Peel and Wax, which are in Philly. They're in Philly.
Oh, okay.
They're in Philly. And then locally, I shop at Keepers. I shop at Milk and Ice. I shop at Bottle of Bread, at Hunting Ground. I never miss the Be More Flea. And looking forward to the Baltimore Vintage Expo, hopefully this fall when it comes back online. I think Baltimore is really a hidden treasure of vintage, and it's one of the loveliest communities of vintage sellers. And I feel so lucky to be part of it. There's Stoked Vintage. They're often at the Be More Flea. I'm just rattling off. There's a lot of vintage sellers in Baltimore, and then my very first sellers who really led me to wearing vintage every day are Luna Blue Vintage, who are now in PA but used to be in Baltimore.
Wonderful. And so you said Baltimore Fleet is that a weekend vintage or is it?
It's it's a local flea that they've kind of gotten back up and running in Fells Point, and there are a lot of vintage sellers now who are there. I mean, any number, and it varies from week to week. There are some people who do it more regularly than others, but there's a lot of vintage, and it's just a wonderful, growing, I think, community of sellers who are at the Be More Flea, and I love the vibe of it, and I'm finding amazing things there.
Oh, that is wonderful. And it's actually good to hear. I mean, so here in New York, and I guess kind of like the rest of the country and the world, we're slowly starting to open up. And it is nice to see that because a lot of the vintage stops, I mean, they're small businesses. And
Right.
so it's nice to see that they were able to weather this, COVID period and be come back up. So that's great to see. Hi, Leah. Good to see you. And actually, I see Ludon Country is one of her old stomping grounds. Adrian mentioned the Bottle of Bread. So yeah, these are great. And Claudia is going to make sure that her daughter Emily, they're in that area,
Oh.
definitely know about these different vintage places. So now that we know where you shop, can you share tips on how do you find great pieces?
Oh my goodness, how do I find great pieces? Well, I am a curator by training. And so I have a collecting nature, and I always have an open mind, but I always have my sort of mental wish list. And I do shop on Etsy. I have amazing pieces that I find on Etsy. I've bought amazing pieces on Poshmark. So there's so many platforms, but I think for me, what I really look for, there are a handful of labels I love. Particularly, I concentrate on the 70s now. So I'm always looking, truthfully, for Courage and Yves Saint Laurent. Yves Saint Laurent 70s is kind of my ultimate that I'm always looking for. But I'm very open-minded, and then I'll buy things that are homemade. I'll buy things that it's about the pattern, the cut, the textures. And really, for me now, I'm getting to the point where I almost don't buy anything that's a solid color. I might buy something that's a solid color, like a pair of pants, but it's all about the prints. It's all about what I can create with the pieces. So that's now really guiding what I buy.
Oh, that is interesting. And I love the fact that you kind of picked a period to focus your vintage on. So, and how long have you been focused really on the 70s, and kind of what drove you in that direction?
It has been an evolution because started really seriously wearing vintage because of a Mad Men party. And I went shopping for a Mad Men outfit I wanted. I wanted to look like Betty Draper.
Wow.
And actually, that's how I met Luna Blue Vintage, who were that in Baltimore. And they head to toe, I was done up like Betty Draper. And I just loved it. And I kind of got rooted in that Mad Men style. So that sort of early 60s. And I was really dressing kind of like Joan, I would say, almost very, very professional 60s, not as mod 60s. And
Hmm.
then it just morphed into the 70s. And I look at it now and I feel like a lot of it too is on some level, my mother has always been very fashionable, but in the 70s, I think she was just peak, glamour of the 70s and style and wearing patterns and bold kind of, always a standout wherever she went. And I think her style really of the 70s really then made me gravitate to the 70s. So I'm sort of comfortably landing in the late 60s and the 70s now with my style.
Well, it suits you beautifully, and I
Thank
love
you.
what you do with the accessories. I recently cut my hair, so I'm a big fan of the scarf look, and I love what you're doing with the scarves.
Oh, thank you.
And it just really it just adds, and once again, it's volumes in terms of the actual look. So it's wonderful to see. So, what are you looking forward to wearing this summer in terms of vintage?
Well, it's interesting because I'm not a summer clothing person. I love fall and winter clothing, and I'll confess that it always takes me a while to hit my groove
Okay.
for the spring summer season. But I am going to be all about just piling on print on print on print. That's what I'm really kind of focused on. I'm very focused at the moment on printed 70s wide leg pants that I can, combine. I actually have been sort of bold in wearing things that are a little bit, tying my blouses instead of tucking them in and having just a little peak with very high waisted pants. And so I think my vibe is sort of more boho, kind of Lauren Hutton, um, that sort of weekend chic of the 70s is kind of what I'm going for.
And actually, can you explain a little bit for anybody in the audience that wants to tie versus tuck?
Oh, okay. Well, there's many YouTube videos, so I would strongly recommend that because there are a lot of tricks to the tie, and I'm not the actual master of the tie. But instead of buttoning, usually your last two buttons, you take the two pieces of your shirt and you start to tie them in a knot. And normally we tie in one direction. So we would take the piece and we tie it and then we tie it again, tie in the opposite direction, and then it will lay flat. And
Oh,
so sometimes I let the tails hang out and sometimes I tuck them in. And then if my pants are high enough waisted, I'll actually have the pants high enough that actually the sort of knot sits at the waistline of the pants. And it gives almost like a jumpsuit look to things.
oh, I like that tip of reversing it. Oh, that's a great
Mhm.
idea. Okay.
It works.
I I hadn't thought of that one. I'm trying to see if there are any questions. There's a lot of nods and yeses about DMV and vintage shopping. So definitely, definitely. And what we have to do is set a date to definitely do some vintage shopping in the area.
Please.
Um, Actually, there is a question in terms of the mixing of the prints.
Mhm.
You explain, I mean, I'm quite sure it's more art than science, how that actually occurs.
I have to say it is absolutely random. So I will look in my closet. I'll often look at sort of the color palette. So print aside, I'm looking at the color palette. And so I think the photo you showed is a great example. So that's an orange set, but it's floral and it has purples and greens and touches of white. And so the thought of that scarf that has the purples and the oranges and many of the tones, but is a different floral, just felt right with that set. And it, it did work. So I think it's drawing on the tones first. And so sometimes I actually, the other photo that you had posted of me where I have the glitter boots on,
Which I loved.
I actually just kept piling it on. And at some point it was like, I'm just piling on this look. It's all similar tones. And then I'm usually trying to unite it with something like a grounding color, like in the orange, it was the green suede belt. That kind of picked up the green. And the other look, it's sort of the turquoisey color. So there's always a uniting color that kind of ties it together so that it doesn't look completely kind of mental, but it has a cohesion. But sometimes I get it right. I have a dear friend who sometimes his joke would be, you had to put the leopard belt on. And then that means translation, you went too far, and sometimes you can go too far. And so it's just sort of being willing to try and to experiment.
And actually, Erica wants me to re-show the photo. I'm going to re-show the photo. But can you, that's a great point about the leopard belt. How would we know if we've gone too far? Other than people asking us, we had to put the belt on. Like, what are some tips that you can share about how might we gauge for ourselves, have we gone too far?
To me, the definition of too far is that you don't feel great in it.
Wow.
You don't feel great in it. So whether it's you've put that extra layer on and you feel it's unflattering, or you feel like the clothes are wearing you and you're not wearing the clothes, I think that's a really important part of kind of a bolder style of dressing, is that sometimes the clothes are wearing you, and so I always try to strike a balance where you can still see yourself in the clothes. So I think it's very personal. And then I think about people like Iris Apfel, where her more is more is more is on steroids compared to mine, but because she owns it and she feels great in it and it's her point of view. So in the end, I think it's how you feel about yourself in the clothes. I don't think there's any rules that people should follow and say, that I should only have 2 prints or I should only have 3 prints. No, if you feel like wearing 8 prints and you feel fabulous in it, go about your day and feel fabulous.
Wonderful. And Judith says she loves the pic. It's absolutely beautiful.
Thank
So
you.
so Adrian pulled my, I guess my fur collar, and said one of the things that I need to do is have follow-up questions on the 20-minute fashion distraction, because it is only 20 minutes.
Yes.
There's a wonderful question here from Amina. And what we're going to do, the question is, she says that you are you have a great style in terms of accessories. And so what I'd love to do is to do a post on how you pick accessories. so that we can have a follow-up on that. And I see that matching earrings that you're wearing right now.
Yes. So I just want to give a little shout out to my husband who never complains about my vintage habit. And for my big birthday recently, got me these late 60s does Victorian kind of Egyptian revival earrings from Parisian Flea, which is another amazing Baltimore seller of estate jewelry. And so I really had to just wear them because the turquoise, and they're really, really precious to me. I wanted them for about a year and he surprised me with them. So I wanted a little shout out for him.
Well, shout out to hubby. Those are beautiful.
Thank you. Of
We will do a post if it's okay.
course.
Talking more about your accessories. And I can't believe it. We're at 20 minutes.
It was so amazing. And I just want to say, you made my day, week, month, that moment you DM'd me and then we talked. It's just was a special moment to meet you. I have to say, I'm so grateful to have this chance to talk to you.
Well, we're going to see each other in person because I'm coming down to the Be More area to do some vintage shopping. And I like to close by saying there's some things that we can't get back, and time is one of them. And so I'm so grateful for you making the time, sharing your insight about vintage. I'm grateful for the audience. You guys keep coming back every Wednesday night. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And we'll see each other again at 9:30 next week. We'll be talking about trends for the summer. More to come on that. And Alexandra, hang on for a minute and definitely look forward to seeing you all next week. And I look forward to seeing you in Baltimore.
I can't wait. Open invitation.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, hang on for 1 minute.